In the Indo-Pacific, those around the Indo-Pacific, despite all of this conflict, we are determined to stay away from that. And simply because we are anchored in the idea that the future of the Indo-Pacific, the future of Asia-Pacific, for example, cannot be determined by anyone but the countries of the Asia-Pacific. And that removes us immediately from that idea that you must choose. We choose our friends. We choose our neighbors.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
We begin the newscast with European countries reportedly pirating nursing students from the Philippines to address a huge demand for healthcare workers. Here's what we know. In a Philippine Star report, De La Salle University Medical Center Employees Union President Vilma Garcia says the United Kingdom and Germany are actively recruiting and offering packages to Filipino nursing students. Garcia says since 2022, foreign countries have been directly contacting the school administration in the recruitment of nursing students. Garcia estimates that about 25% of their nursing students have accepted offers.
Garcia added that the school administration is not stopping the nursing students and letting them decide if they would accept the offer from other countries. She, however, expressed fear that the ongoing recruitment of Filipino nursing students will further worsen the prevailing manpower shortage in private hospitals. Currently, Garcia said De La Salle could not operate fully and can only accommodate 43% of its bed capacity due to the lack of nurses. For their part, German ambassador to the Philippines, Anke Reifenstuhl, has denied that the European country is pirating Filipino nursing students. She noted that Germany is working with the Philippines in recruiting health workers through the Triple Win program, which started in 2013 after Germany's Federal Employment Agency and the Labor Department signed a bilateral agreement.
Here to give us their thoughts on the supposed pirating of nurses, we have with us live via Zoom Filipino Nurses United Vice President Eleanor Nolasco. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, ma'am.
Okay, magandang gabi, Robbie and Gretchen.
Ma'am, first of all, pirating is a heavy, loaded word. Is it a fair term to use in this context?
Yeah. Actually, the word is putting the situation bluntly, no? Pero even before this disclosure by the union officer from De La Salle, we've been hearing reports that there are really foreign representatives of hospitals and other institutions abroad who are coming over and making orientations or giving orientations to students, especially the senior nursing students, enticing them to try it out in other countries with the promise of better employment packages. So it's been going on, and even without the active recruitment of these foreign agencies, we have already seeing many nurses leaving the practice and intending or really working it out or trying to work out the opportunities of being employed elsewhere rather than stay in the country. So even without this disclosure or this information, the exodus of nurses has been going on mid of last year already, and we've seen many hospital wards even closing down, and they are not able to recruit nurses because nurses have been disincentivized and they felt not appreciated because of the conditions that face them in work, specifically the low wages, and the inhumane work conditions. So this is not new. What's alarming is that they've gone to schools directly.
Yes.
They're not just getting nurses from the hospitals, but the students, the senior students they're starting with young nurses and they're trying to really entice them, with good offers.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, could you expound on that very briefly? Because like you said, nobody's really surprised by this.
Yeah.
Everybody knew that at the end of the day, this comes down to an exodus that has been going
Yeah.
on for many, many years, if not decades. But dun lang sa issue mismo of recruiting in schools, because we get the sense that that is where this issue has sparked new concern. Is that breaking any kind of protocols? We know that government to government, there are protocols, there are programs, as the German ambassador has pointed out, for cooperation, recognizing the needs and the issues on both sides. But doon sa point of recruiting direct in schools, does that break any kind of protocol, any kind of agreement, any kind of law?
We don't see any breakage or any violation of existing labor laws. No, it's more the response of the government that will determine whether these foreign recruiters can come in or not. It's really dependent on the schools themselves if they will allow this. But as it is, they are allowing it, no, because it's just like an invitation. There's really no contract yet. So there's really, strictly speaking, nothing wrong with them coming to the schools, because they would like to offer our nursing students better prospects when they graduate. So, but of course, morally, and on the part of the Filipino people, it will be a big loss if these potential nurses will be going to elsewhere to practice their skills instead of practicing their skills here and serving their own countrymen, because there are no opportunities. So can we blame them if they opt to find better life elsewhere?
Ma'am, can you give us more insight into the recruitment that is happening? How young does this go? And what exactly is being offered? And also, do you take this positively, looking at the situation for nurses? I mean, here in the Philippines and abroad, both sides, and also the welfare of nurses in general.
Okay. The diaspora of Filipino nurses, as we know, is all over the world. So this is just hastening their departure from their own country. Of course, on the part of the Filipino Nurses United, we've been opposing the idea of nurses going abroad, and we are offering to the government the idea that they should make work enticing or more favorable here in our own country. As it is, they're really pushing nurses out because they are not given enough wages. They are even the benefits that have already been mandated are not given on time, delayed, or not given at all. Up to this point, COVID benefits are still not received by all the qualified nurses, especially nurses in the local government units and in the private sector. So really, many nurses and other health workers are disincentivized, and they feel not appreciated at all. So they're being pushed to seek work elsewhere. So on our part, it's saddening because the ones who will really have the big loss are the Filipino people, because the ones who are going out of the country are the more skilled ones, and the human resource are lost.
Ma'am, whether it's the public or the private sector, what more can be done? And how do you reconcile these two parang opposing conditions? On the one hand, we cannot hold on to our nurses. There are many opportunities abroad. At the same time, during the pandemic, hindi naman po kaila kahit kanino, ang daming private hospitals and public hospitals saying, ang dami naming opening. but there are no takers. Does it all boil down to pay and benefits, or are there other things within our control here in our country, whether it's the private or the public sector, that we can somehow work to provide incentives rather than the disincentives, as you pointed out?
Yun na nga, Sir Robbie, no? Very basic lang naman ang problema. Bigyan mo ng nakabubuhay na sahod ng mga nurses, bigyan mo ng magandang kondisyon sa paggawa, and those things should be in place already, di ba? Ang nangyayari, kailangan pang ipanawagan, kailangan pang itula, kailangan pang ipaglaban, and those are laws already that should be implemented and not to be fought for. So, yun nga, dahilan sa hindi naman talaga na ibibigay yung mga nararapat, nurses are pushed elsewhere or specifically overseas to countries where the pay is higher. For instance, in Europe, in Germany, in UK, they are given 3 figures, no? 6 figures rather, mga 136,000 or 150,000 per month. Iba pa yung lodging nila and other benefits. Dito, ang pinakamataas na entry-level salary, salary grade 15 for those in the public sector at 35,000. At sa mga nurses naman in the private sector, nasa minimum pa rin sila na 12 to 15,000 average. So, what do we expect of them? Diba? It's not right naman for us to keep them here when they also have families and other needs to take care of. So we've been talagang pushing for decent wages for our nurses and better work conditions, because these are what will make them stay and serve in the country.
Ma'am, just as you mentioned, this has hastened diaspora of nurses in the country. For us to understand better how pressing of a problem this is, kamusta po ba sa ating mga ospital, and how is the problem with shortage of nurses?
Malaki pa rin ang pangangailangan for nurses, no? Even Acting Secretary of Health, Dr. Rosario Vergere, said that we need more than 100,000 nurses to fill up the health system. 100,000 nurses. But we have enough number of nurses who can be recruited to serve in the public and private sector. The thing is, it boils down to sahod at benepisyo. Sino naman ang gustong pumasok na isasakripisyo mo mismong buhay mo na nakita natin nung COVID para sa napakaliit na sahod? Hindi naman malaki ang hinihingi ng mga nurses. Yun lamang disente at nakabubuhay. In fact, yung SG-15, very exclusive pa yan, because that's only given for nurses in the public sector as a starting salary, no? Ang dami nating mga nurses na hindi naman regular. So hindi sila magpa-qualify for that salary grade 15. At hindi rin naman comparable yung mga sahod ng ating mga kapwa nurses sa private sector. So talagang napakalungkot. Napakalungkot.
Sige po. Maraming salamat po. Filipino Nurses United Vice President Eleanor Nolasco. In other news, the Philippines was named as one of the top exporters of counterfeit goods and fake products. A 2022 study by the European Union Intellectual Property Office and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says that the Philippines ranks 13th globally as an origin country for dangerous counterfeits from 2017 to 2019. Meanwhile, the Philippines ranks 15th globally in terms of origin countries of dangerous fakes purchased online. Some examples enumerated by the study include pharmaceuticals, food, clothing, toys for children, electronics, vehicle parts, and even personal protective equipment against COVID-19. The EU IPO says that the global counterfeit trade was valued at $464 billion, or 2.5% of all world trade in 2019.
Right after the break, not a single OFW facing cases abroad have been acquitted in the first half of 2022. The DFA admits to the low acquittal rate, which senators say is unacceptable. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
About 5,000 years ago, there was a lava explosion here in Iceland, and when volcanoes erupt and cool down, they leave behind lots and lots of basalt. So all this rock is predominantly basalt. That's pretty much what all of Iceland is made of. And basalt rock is really good at capturing carbon dioxide.
CarbFix imitates and accelerates these natural processes to permanently store carbon dioxide in basaltic rock. These futuristic pods is where it all happens.
So when you inject CO2 underground, you can actually now show us what exactly happens.
Yeah, this is actually a nice example of kind of before and after.
Yeah. Can I touch it?
Of course.
Now this is basalt, right?
Yes, it kind of looks like a sponge. And these pores and fractures and vesicles, they can actually host the CO2 once you've turned it into stone. And that's what you see here. In this rock, we have already stored some CO2. You can see all these white spots. So here, the pores are actually filled with these white minerals, and this is just simply CO2 turned to stone.
It's been a volatile start to the year for the pound, and investors are bracing for more turbulence. In 2022, the pound hit a record low against the dollar and delivered its worst annual performance in 6 years. This year, investors see very little room for recovery given the UK's various economic challenges. There's the Bank of England warning that a recession is all but inevitable, which would limit its ability to raise interest rates. Sterling is also being held back by a record decline in living standards, as well as a housing market that looks vulnerable to a sharp correction. That's why strategists expect the current...
You're watching the big story here on One News.
Senators were shocked to find out in a hearing that based on data from the Foreign Affairs Department, no OFW was acquitted from offenses committed in other countries in the first half of 2022. This is how senators reacted to this information.
Ibig sabihin, walang ginagawa yung ating mga taga-gobyerno.
Ibig sabihin, lahat convicted po sila, lahat convicted.
Kaya nga po, ibig sabihin, hindi po effective yung mga defense lawyers natin. Baka yung mga tatakbuhin, sorry, pipitsyoki mga abogadong nakuha doon. Hindi yung mga di Campanilla. Kaya parang zero acquittal, lumilitaw. Kung hundreds po yung mga nakasuhan, actually thousands I've heard. Kanina, sinabi ni Senator Joel, thousands, and then a dozen lang ang acquitted. Well, sir, mukhang hindi yata maganda sa tenga po yun.
We would agree on that, but again, ang position ng DFA is the bottom line is they get legal representation kaysa wala, no? And
no, sorry sir, don't say that. Kaysa wala. No, di po.
Parang sige, meron kayo tapos bahala na kayo sa buhay niyo.
The DFA says that zero acquittal does not necessarily mean Filipinos facing charges abroad have already been found guilty. That is despite the agency's record showing that more than 1,000 cases have been concluded from January to June last year. The DFA data also shows that only around a dozen Filipinos facing charges abroad are acquitted every year.
Kung hindi man na-acquit, hindi nabigyan ng maximum penalty, no? At saka, ibig sabihin din, siguro, zero acquittal does not mean na, baka mali lang yung pagkasulat, no? Lahat yun na hatulan na guilty, baka pending pa yung mga cases noon.
I couldn't believe it with my own eyes. Kung acceptable sa akin, hindi ko itatanong ito. 1,278 concluded criminal cases.
We don't get a lot of acquittals. That's the fact. We don't get a lot of acquittals. We don't. Usually, maximum, maybe less than a dozen a year, maybe. Kasi nangyayari dyan, most of the time, ang nangyayari, paano natutulungan ng Filipino, na nasa-settle, hindi na dumidiretso pa sa kaso para
Okay, so yung nagbibigay ng black money ng mga
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. This is not acceptable. You don't say na hindi nawawala. These are facts. These are figures that we have in our hand. We wanted to find out, tama si Mr. Chairman, ilan yung na-acquit? Kung walang na-acquit, what the hell are we doing here?
The National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA, expresses support for the proposal to impose taxes on luxury items. In today's Laging Handa briefing, NEDA Undersecretary Rosemary De Leon says the measure proposed by Albay Representative Joey Salceda could help the government boost its revenues. De Leon adds that the move could make the country's tax system simpler and fairer. Salceda's proposal is in response to calls of international organizations to tax the country's super rich, as the wealth gap in the Philippines remains to be the widest in Asia. For the lawmaker, the best compromise is to impose non-essential goods taxes on several lines of luxury items instead of the rich.
Magandang ano din po to na may ano natin siya para una makatulong sa pagkuha ng revenue sa ating revenue collection, and then it's also a way for yung ating mga the more fortunate ones na makatulong, kaya syempre dapat tatapatan din to ng good governance, malaman nila na napupunta naman sa maayos na mga proyekto na talagang pang development and also for poverty reduction.
Meanwhile, breads and pastries may soon burn a hole in your pockets. Local bakers will likely make price adjustments due to the rising price of eggs in the local market. Gio Robles tells us more in this report.
Built in the 1940s, this business along Arquiza Street in Manila has been patronized by many generations. One reason for the draw, they don't skimp on ingredients, especially eggs. In fact, their budget for the staple amount to 13,000 pesos daily. But now that eggs are more expensive, the budget is now at 20,000 pesos.
Ang laki po ng tinaas. Dati po is 180 ang isang tray. Ngayon po is 270 na po per tray.
Cakes in Hizons range from 350 pesos to 3,500. Even the price of their famous ensaymada went up to 30 pesos a piece. Meanwhile, the rising prices of egg can also be felt in several bakeries in Mandaluyong. There's up to 2 pesos markup for breads that use eggs. These include egg pie now at 24 pesos per slice from 23 pesos, while toasted siopaw is up from 14 pesos to 15 pesos. Prices of Spanish bread, pan de coco, and asado roll also went up by 2 pesos.
Minsan sila nagre-reklamo dahil bakit daw tumaas ang aming presyo. Ay sabi ko naman, bakit hindi po namin itataas yan? Sobra ng taas kasi ng asukal, harina, mantika, lahat tumaas naman eh.
The Philippine Egg Board Association earlier pointed out to bird flu as the cause for the rising price of eggs. For Philippine Federation of Bakers Association spokesperson Chito Chavez, the lack of supply of eggs could become a crisis. He stressed that it's not only a setback for bakers, but also for the whole poultry industry. With this, Chavez calls on the government to support local broilers. He also believes that prices of bread could increase further if the issue on eggs is not addressed.
Yung mga heavily dependent on egg and sugar na produkto ng bakery, palagay ko mapipilitan na magkosta o magkwenta at wala tayong magagawa. Kung kailangang baguhin ang price tag, ay gagawin natin ito. Mag-survive lang kami.
For News 5, Gio Robles, we are One News.
After the break, President Marcos is gearing up for his meeting with the World Economic Forum president in Davos, where he is expected to present the Maharlika Wealth Fund proposal. More details on that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
Social media companies did make great strides in moderating content over the recent years. However, Sunday's events in Brasilia show they have a long way to go in languages other than English.
Much like the January 6th attack on the US Capitol, posts seen by Bloomberg News suggest participants were able to openly organize themselves on social media. We discovered posts on social media featuring apparent attendees at Sunday's attack using code words to discuss their routes to Brasilia as well as the kind of weapons they were planning to bring. The terms themselves were relatively simplistic, with phrases such as Selma's Party and Corn on the Cob used as standards for demonstration and people, respectively.
To many observers of the Brazilian government in recent years, it comes as no surprise that Bolsonaro's supporters have taken a page out of the MAGA playbook. Bolsonaro, like Trump, also attempted to discredit last year's election. And now, as the Brazilian government looks to bring those who participated in the attack to justice, his supporters are referring to the arrested as political prisoners and attempting to spread the claim that they were in fact infiltrated by members of radical leftist groups. What Sunday's events made clear is that the structural issues behind the way social networks handle misinformation are still very much there.
இதில் பிறந்திருக்கோம் அப்படின்னா பெருமாளுக்கு கைங்கரியம் பண்ணுறதுக்காகவே நம்ம பிறந்திருக்கோம். ஸோ அந்த இதில் வந்து அப்பா, தாத்தா, கொள்ளு தாத்தா இப்படி எல்லாருமே வந்து இந்த பெருமாளுடைய அலங்காரத்தை வந்து நம்ம பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தோம். ஸோ அவள் இதை பார்த்து 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 அது மாதிரி நம்மளும் பண்ணணும் ஒரு ஆசையினால பெருமாளுக்கு அலங்காரம் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்னு, பெருமாளுக்கு மாத்திரம் இல்லாமல் எல்லா சுவாமிக்குமே அலங்காரம் பண்ணணும் அப்படின்ற ஒரு இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட்டில் வந்து ஸோ அப்படியே நம்ம அலங்காரம் பண்ணோம். அலங்காரத்துக்கு வந்து ஆர்ட், ஓவியம், இன்னொன்று வந்து பரதநாட்டியம், இன்னும் வந்து யோகாசனம், இது மூணும் கலந்தது தான் நம்ம
You're still watching the big story here on One News.
World and business leaders kicked off day 2 of the World Economic Forum with a series of sessions tackling some of the world's biggest problems today. Here's what we know. The World Economic Forum is an annual meeting of policymakers and business leaders in Davos, Switzerland. This year, participants will tackle several crises, including the rising cost of living, food security, and climate change. This comes at the back of fears of a global recession following years of economic slowdown from the COVID-19 pandemic and the war between Russia and Ukraine, which is another key topic in the forum. Participants are also expected to tackle developments in tech and artificial intelligence, as well as matters concerning cybersecurity.
The Philippine delegation, particularly the economic team, has its hands full today with the Country Strategy Dialogue. This dialogue is an opportunity to present the Philippines' economic gains and promote the country as an investment hub. There's also the bilateral meeting with the International Monetary Fund, and tomorrow, President Bongbong Marcos will have a dialogue with World Economic Forum President Borge Brend. President Marcos is expected to pitch the Maharlika Investment Fund in the forum. Before this, Finance Chief Ben Jokno already touted the proposed Sovereign Wealth Fund as a vehicle to support the Philippines' economic goals. Jokno said that the fund will be established with utmost transparency and sound fiscal management.
We will have more discussions on the Maharlika Fund soft launch with Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel on the Chiefs immediately after the big story.
And before we go, did you know that the Philippines has its own native dog breed? And no, I'm not talking about the Aspin or the Askal. The Asong Guba, or witch dog, is being petitioned to be the country's official dog breed. This forest dog appears similar to the aspen we know, but if we take a closer look, it has a distinct color or color pattern, much like a tiger print. And unlike the aspen, the asong gubat is said to mate only with its kind. The asong gubat is considered an indigenous breed, with its bloodline believed to be around 36,000 years old. Canine experts say that this breed is mostly found in the Cordillera region, Zambales, Bicol, Aklan, and Bohol. For those thinking of getting one as a pet, experts say that it could take a while before the Philippine forest dog gets accustomed to domestication.
Pag nasabi mong domesticated, they can live with people. Now, the asong gubat appears to be somewhere in the middle. Kasi very loving siya doon sa kanyang original family eh. Pero doon lang. Pagka sa strangers na, hindi na pwede.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to One News PH for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.